Good evening. Welcome to Election Night in America 2020. Tonight we have the United States Senate elections with Mitch McConnell, the defending incumbent Republican Senate Majority Leader, against Chuck Schumer and the Democratic Party, the Senate Minority Leader, who hopes with a Joe Biden victory in the White House will win back the United States Senate for the first time in over 6 years. And taking a look at our first poll closings at 7 p.m. Eastern Time, we have 5 Senate races. By the way, all of the races that are competitive are highlighted in yellow at the poll closing hour. Out of the state of Virginia, our first projection of the evening, incumbent Democrat Mark Warner wins another 6-year term here. The Virginia GOP has since moved into irrelevance following their 2017 governor election defeats, 2018 pickups for the Democratic Party in the United States House, and retaining the United States Senate seat, and now being in the minority in both delegations in the state of Virginia following the 2019 statewide elections. In the state of Kentucky, Majority Leader Mitch McConnell facing off his own opponent, Amy McGrath, the notable former current veteran. Amy McGrath currently faces off against Mitch McConnell with 48.8% of the vote. The race is still too close to call, about a quarter of the vote in. In the state of South Carolina, Jamie Harrison, though out fundraising Lindsey Graham, is expected to come up short this evening based off our ratings before this race, but he's currently leading against Lindsey Graham, very notable Republican figure, very outspoken against President Trump, currently at 33.4%, though we do only have Democratic precincts reporting. And in the state of Georgia, it is currently too close to call. Jon Ossoff, most notable for his 6th congressional district special election back in 2017, the most expensive House race in United States history. He ended up coming up short, now facing off against incumbent Republican David Perdue. And in this Senate special election, we have the runoff data here. Matt Lieberman, the Democrat, trails Doug Collins, a statewide official in Georgia, very well known across the state, 46% of precincts reporting. And on our Senate map, the Democrats currently hold 36 seats with that win in the state of Virginia, and 30 seats for the GOP. It is now time for our 7:30 p.m. poll closings, West Virginia, and the only close race here in North Carolina, a total of 2 Senate races. In the state of West Virginia, Shelley Moore Capito wins another 6-year term here. Democrats thought they could eye this one up, but it looks like she will win with a solid 25% margin based off the results we have right now. In North Carolina, Cal Cunningham trails incumbent Republican Thom Tillis, who has since fallen into an unpopularity rating across the state, 55% of precincts reporting, very, very close, less than a percentage point. And on our Senate map, the Democrats remain at 36 seats while the GOP edges up to 31. It is now time for our 8 p.m. poll closings. 11 total Senate races, Alabama, Mississippi, Maine, are currently contested in our poll closings right now. In the state of Delaware, Chris Coons wins another term here, 6 years for the Democrats in Delaware, Joe Biden's home state. In the state of Illinois, Dick Durbin wins another 6-year term from this state. No surprise in many of these states. Joe Kennedy, who had a very hotly contested primary with Senator Ed Markey, he ended up defeating him. Joe Kennedy III goes on from being a representative to the next senator from the state of Massachusetts, joins Elizabeth Warren up there. In the state of New Hampshire, Jeanne Shaheen, this race normally would be competitive, but the Republicans failed to field a good candidate against her. She wins by a solid 15-point margin at this hour. And in the state of New Jersey, Cory Booker, very notable candidate in 2020, very strong campaigner, was actually just campaigning with Vice President Biden virtually. In the state of Pennsylvania just a couple of days ago. So New Jersey goes to the Democratic Party. In the state of Rhode Island, Jack Reed, another solid Democratic state, no surprise here. There is some discussion about the census there and whether or not they'll lose an electoral vote. In Oklahoma, Jim Inhofe, the most, one of the more infamous Republican senators known for his snowball global warming performance in front of the United States Senate, he wins another 6-year term from Oklahoma. And in Tennessee, an open race, Bill Hagerty actually goes ahead and wins this race. This was vacated by Lamar Alexander. This was targeted by some Democrats, but ended up going to the GOP. And taking a look at Alabama, it is currently too close to call. Doug Jones currently leads, currently trails Tommy Tuberville, who actually went against Jeff Sessions, who held the seat before Senator Jones. He ended up losing his primary after Donald Trump endorsed Tommy Tuberville, the Auburn football coach, and Tommy Tuberville currently leads Doug Jones. This is one of the only Democratic races that are too close to call. And in the state of Maine, it is currently too close to call. Susan Collins, who went from being the most popular senator in our country to now being the most unpopular senator, the only senator with a higher disapproval rating than Senator Mitch McConnell. Sarah GIDEON currently leads her, served in the state office in the state of Maine. So she's a pretty notable name across this state, but we will see at the end of the evening. And in Mississippi, notable because it was a close race the last time Cindy Hyde-Smith, when there was a special election, she was the appointed Republican nominee or Republican senator, but now is facing off for her first official 6-year win against Mike Espy, who was also the Democratic nominee back when he faced off against Cindy Hyde-Smith. 61% of precincts reporting, a 10-point margin for the GOP. Looks like she might edge out this victory, but we will see. And on the current Senate map, the Democrats have now broken 40 at 42 Senate seats, while the GOP remains at 33. It is now time for our 8:30 p.m. poll closings. We only have one Senate race up, but we do have some statewide projections. In the state of Arkansas, Senator Tom Cotton won his first election back in 2014 against a Democrat incumbent who didn't even get 40% of the vote in Arkansas. He goes on to win against no Democratic opponent, no one fielded there by the Arkansas Democrats. And in South Carolina, Lindsey Graham wins this Senate race against Jamie Harrison. Again, he did not fundraise as much as Jamie Harrison did, but it still ends up with the victory. South Carolina, a traditional Republican state, no real surprise, but a loss for the Democrats. In Kentucky, Mitch McConnell defeats Amy McGrath in this contested Senate race. He is the Senate Majority Leader, but he's also disliked by his constituents. This would be his 6th win in the state of Kentucky. And on our Senate map, we have 42 Senate seats for the Democrats and 36 for the GOP. At 9 p.m. Eastern Time, we have 12 Senate races from the competitive states of Arizona, Kansas, Michigan, Texas. And if we go ahead and take a look at our calls at this evening, in the state of Louisiana, Bill Cassidy wins here. His first term back in 2014, goes ahead and wins another 6-year term for the Republicans. Not competitive whatsoever for the Democrats, though they do have a jungle system. In the state of Nebraska, Ben Sasse goes ahead and wins the United States Senate race. No surprise, though he does have some notable outbursts against President Trump, but nothing enough to push away his Republican constituents from re-electing him. In South Dakota, Mike Rounds wins another 6-year term in this race. And Wyoming, an open race, Cynthia Loomis goes ahead and wins her first official term as United States Senator. And this is a big one. This is the first pickup of the evening. Alabama. Tommy Tuberville defeats incumbent Democrat Doug Jones, who won that Senate race against Roy Moore in 2017. It was a very narrow race, but he ended up winning it. It was the first Democrat to win there in 25 years. The Republicans win back that Senate race. And in Georgia, it goes to Doug Collins. The runoff election has been called for the GOP. Doug Collins will be the next United States Senator from Georgia. And in the state of Colorado, this is another flip. John Hickenlooper ran for president in 2020, was the governor of Colorado, running against one of the more unpopular Republican incumbents. Cory Gardner goes ahead and wins at poll closing hour. And in Minnesota, Tina Smith wins her official term. Had an election back in 2018, if you recognize her name, but she had been in that race because of Al Franken's resignation. She goes ahead and wins her official 6-year term in Minnesota. And in New Mexico, an open race, Ben Ray Lujan goes ahead and wins his first official term here. The Democratic incumbent retiring, and the Democrats do retain this seat in their column. And in Arizona, it is currently too close to call. Again, if you recognize Martha McSally's name, it's because she ran for senator back in 2018, ended up losing, and then following John McCain, she became the appointed Republican senator, actually after John Kyle, but eventually became the Republican senator from Arizona, now facing off another election bid against Mark Kelly, an astronaut known as the husband of Representative Gabby Giffords. And in the state of Kansas, Barbara Boyer is pretty happy that she's facing off against KRIS KOBACH, the failed Republican nominee for governor in Kansas from 2018, who lost to Laura Kelly. The Democrats won there for the first time in quite some time. KRIS KOBACH now narrowly ahead of Barbara Boyer by 0.1% with 29% of precincts reporting. This may actually be one of the closest races of the evening. And in the state of Michigan, Gary Peters running against John James, another Republican nominee from 2018 who lost. He ran against Debbie Stabenow at the time. He is now running against Gary Peters. All polling data indicates Gary Peters will win by roughly 8 to 10%, but we will see with around 40% of the precincts yet to report in the state of Michigan. And in Texas, John Cornyn actually behind MJ Hager here by around 5%. Joe Biden leads Donald Trump in this state as well. It seems that Joe Biden is outperforming MJ Hegar in this state, so that may or may not be good news for her at the end of the evening. But she currently leads the incumbent Republican with around 50% of precincts reporting, though there are some outstanding Republican counties. And on our Senate map, we have 45 Senate seats for the Democratic Party and 42 for the GOP, shaping up to be a very close evening. It is now 10 p.m. Eastern Time, and we have two Senate races from Iowa and Montana, both of which are very contested. In Mississippi, Cindy Hyde-Smith defeats Mike Espy in this contested Senate race. She goes on to win her first official 6-year term. In the state of Iowa, it is currently too close to call. Theresa Greenfield trails incumbent Republican Joni Ernst, notable for her 2014 victory. Rose to fame very quickly amongst the Republican Party, but she seems to be in a very close race right now. In the state of Montana, Steve Bullock running against Steve Daines. Steve Bullock, the incumbent Democrat, also ran for president in 2020. Currently leads the incumbent Republican in this race with around 50% of precincts reporting. Should be extremely close, as all data indicates. And on our Senate map, we have 45 Democratic seats and 43 Republican seats. At 11 p.m. Eastern Time, we have a number of calls to make, and we have two Senate races from Idaho and Oregon, neither of which are competitive. In Oregon, Jeff Merkley wins again, the Democrat incumbent sent back to Washington for another 6-year term from Oregon. And in Michigan, this is a big one. Following our call for Joe Biden winning Michigan, the state of Michigan also goes to the Democrats on the Senate level. Gary Peters goes ahead and wins this Senate race. Did have a pretty tough time with this re-election bid, but it was an 8-point margin as it stands right now, so should be pretty comfortable with his chances in the future. And Arizona, the state goes to the Democratic Party, officially has more Democrats than Republicans in the House. Now 2 Democratic senators, and likely will go to Joe Biden at the end of the evening, currently leading Donald Trump there. Mark Kelly goes on and wins the state of Arizona over Martha McSally. Now 2 Democrats from that region of the United States. And North Carolina, Cal Cunningham, this is a big one. Huge pickup for the Democratic Party. North Carolina goes to the Democrats. Cal Cunningham defeats Tom Tillis, the unpopular Republican senator from this state. He wins with Roy Cooper called on the governor level. It looks like Joe Biden might just narrowly edge out a victory in this presidential election as well in North Carolina. Cal Cunningham wins the United States Senate. And in the state of Idaho, Jim Risch goes on to win another 6-year term. No real notable contenders against him. And in Texas, John Cornyn, though trailing his Democratic opponent just a couple, 30 minutes ago, John Cornyn goes ahead and wins this Texas Senate race. We have enough information to characterize this as another Republican state. And Georgia, this Senate election, the runoff election was called for Doug Collins. Now David Perdue will defeat Jon Ossoff and win the state of Georgia, solidifying 2 Republican seats in Georgia. That raises questions as to whether or not Stacey Abrams should have run for Senate. And on our Senate map, we have 49 Democratic seats, 1 away from a majority if Joe Biden does win the election, and 2 away from an outright majority, while the Republicans remain at 46. At 12:13 Eastern Time, we have 3 state calls from Maine, Kansas, and Iowa. In the state of Maine, Sarah Gideon defeats Susan Collins. Susan Collins, the Republican bipartisan senator, had a very high approval rating at the start of the campaign season, ending up with a very low approval rating. Most notable because she has never really had a competitive race other than her first race in the 80s. For the first time, the Democrats have defeated Susan Collins in the state of Maine. Sarah Gideon will go on to be the next senator from Maine, a pickup for the Democrats. Another pickup in Iowa, Joni Ernst has been defeated by Theresa Greenfield. Didn't necessarily have a competitive primary, but ended up on top and now will become the next United States Senator from Iowa, flipping it back to the Democratic column. But in Kansas, KRIS KOBACH ends up winning the Republican, was the Republican nominee and ends up winning the Senate race here. A lot of people were speculating that he could possibly lose this race because of his 2018 loss, but it looks like he narrowly takes the plurality in this race and narrowly edges out Barbara Bollier in the state of Kansas. But on the United States Senate map, the Democrats officially have 51. Regardless of the presidential election call, the Democrats would have won the majority anyways, 51-47, which means the Democratic Party will win control of the United States Senate. This is the first time since 2014 the Democrats have been in control, and they now control the House, the Senate, and now the White House, the Democratic trifecta in the United States government. Chuck Schumer will become the next majority leader if all goes to plan. Based off the numbers that we have, the Democrats are now at 51 seats with 2 out races of Montana and Alaska, one of which expected to go to the GOP, but both of which are contested. The Democrats could gain on their numbers right now, but have an absolute majority. At 1 a.m. Eastern Time, we have the state of Alaska, which is currently too close to call. Al Gross is not a Democrat, thus why he has a purple name. It means that he is an independent. He ran in the Democrat Libertarian Independent primary. I know it's a lot of names, but that's how Alaska holds their primary, and it looks like there is one clear nominee, and Al Gross seems to be narrowly trailing incumbent Republican Dan Sullivan. Currently too close to call. We will see in just about an hour as to who the victor is when Alaska says they have officially counted all mail-in ballots. And taking a look at this map, the Democrats remain at 51 seats to the Republicans 47. In the states of Alaska and Montana at 2 a.m. Eastern Time, we have 2 Senate projections. In the state of Alaska, Dan Sullivan wins another 6-year term in this state, though having a notable independent opponent, the House race being very close as well. The Democrats, or independent, who was going to caucus with the Democratic Party, comes up short. Dan Sullivan wins a 6-year term in the state of Alaska, his second time winning here. And in Montana, Steve Bullock, the incumbent governor, now defeating Steve Daines. Though the governor election ended up going to the GOP, the presidential election overwhelmingly to Donald Trump, and the House election to the GOP, the Senate election is a pickup for the Democratic Party. Steve Bullock will win the state of Montana, officially solidifying the Democrats at 52 Senate seats and 48 for the GOP, an overall net 5 pickups for the Democratic Party, winning back the states of Arizona and Iowa and North Carolina. Though losing Alabama, they also won in the state of Maine, Montana, and Colorado, which was enough to give them a 5 pickups in the United States Senate. So thank you guys so much for watching this video. This video was actually a subscriber decided video. You can go ahead and take part in those on the community tab. Please consider joining as a member on this channel. There should be a button right next to the subscribe button on the left. You can go ahead and see it on the channel. Check out the playlist for 2020 election nights. You can go ahead and check those out. And the next video, which will be whatever is tailored towards your interest. Check out the Instagram and Twitter. Let's Talk Elect for Instagram and LT Elections for Twitter. I'm talking too long, so the end screen isn't going to play until later on in the video. But again, thank you guys so much for participating in this subscriber decided election night. We had around 2,000 respondents, so it was an amazing time. And again, this is not my prediction. This is what you guys decided the results should be. So again, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you all tomorrow.